Hi, everybody, and welcome to Eating at a Meeting. How are you this week? I am on my own today, don't have a guest, and I actually am excited about that because I just want to talk about what I've been seeing and hearing around food and beverage for the last couple of weeks and experiencing myself. So, just really popping talking about that, and if anybody's listening, please join in. I can send you the link to pop into the onto the camera with me because I would love to chat with you about what you're seeing too and what questions you have. And I actually am thinking about making this one of the monthly conversations, is that anybody that I know can pop in here on that conversation. Probably will create some kind of form for you to fill out saying, hey, I want to pop on. But you can pop in at the last minute as well. Oh, and actually, there's my friend Lynn Welsh because we were talking about this. So, hello, Lynn.
Hi, Tracy. I was just going to grab one quick thing.
Here you go.
So I
So
wanted to say I was so excited when you called this morning
yeah,
because I'm teaching a class I've never taught before,
uh-huh.
on-premise catering.
Okay.
And it's through Northern Arizona University. It's
Mm-hmm.
written by, I believe, do you know Patty Shock?
Yes, I do. She was
And John
fantastic.
Stefanelli. John Stefanelli, who I actually had as a professor in college.
Wow.
So I'm very excited because this class is going to be what they call hyperflex. So I'm going to teach live in the classroom while many of my students are going to be virtual.
Okay. All right. Did you write? I'm here too. So if somebody just popped in here too, I want to see who that is. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So you will teach it virtual, but people can show up in class as well.
Yes, I will be teaching at Scottsdale Community College, and then the rest of my students will be virtual. So I'm shilling for people if you want to enroll in the class through Northern Arizona University. But I'm so excited because I listened to your show to look for trends that I should be watching for to share with my students.
That's really great because I'm sure, and I love Patty Shock, and actually Patty Shock used to have me come speak to her class at UNLV years ago.
My alma
And
mater. Yeah.
oh, okay, I didn't realize that. And okay, so whoever said I'm here too, I need you to tell me who you are so I can send you the link to join us because I can't see ya anywhere. Um, I'm going to find you. And so I'm interested to see how you're going to take what that book was written, and when was that book written?
That's a good question. So this is the second
Let me see.
edition. That's the challenge I have with my event class. That book was written and the author has passed away, Julia Rutherford Silver.
Yep.
And that is the best event book that I could have found. So this book was written, let's see. I'm not finding it, of course, because I'm looking for it. Let me find it. Look here in the beginning. It just says second edition.
Because I think well, you're looking for that. I mean, I think a lot of things have changed.
Correct.
And
So this was from 2011. So that was the problem that I had with my event book. That also was from 2011. So you're right. I think we're going to see more trends in locavore, which is eating food that's grown 50 miles from where you're eating it. I think we're going to see more trends in small plates. I think we're going to see more trends in the assisted buffet style.
Okay.
And I think that we're going to see more trends in not necessarily reduce, reuse, and recycling, because that is a whole different conversation.
Right.
But I think in smarter purchasing decisions.
Exactly. And especially because, and Tracy Cooper just piped in here from LinkedIn, food and beverage trends and how we're managing skyrocketing costs. I mean, Tracy, and that goes into what Lynn just said. We have to make smarter purchasing decisions. And what does that entail? And let me know if you want to pop in here and join us, because I can send you the link to come on the show as well. But it is because, and smarter decisions comes into really knowing our numbers, but actually I talked to a chef the other day, somebody that works at the Boston Convention Center. One of his clients was, I think it was Boston, RSVP'd for 1,500 because they weren't seeing the registrations come in, and they had over 6,000 people show up. And so, and as the numbers got closer to the event, the numbers went up. So they kept upping their numbers. And so the convention center was able to confirm 4,500, but then they ended up having 6,000 people on site. And I'm like, what did you do? And he supplemented it with food trucks. But he said they had bought all the chicken in the city as well. So I'm like, what do you do?
So
Right?
my head went in a totally different direction. I would
Yeah.
have gone to food stations with smaller portions.
True. But if you think about it, how do you do that at the last minute?
Right, because
Right?
now you're
Because
getting into labor and equipment. You're correct.
exactly. And labor is another issue that we have right now. So how do you manage that? I want to make sure what settings I'm on here. Okay.
Yes,
And
yes. So I'm not sure. There was the cutest LinkedIn post the other day.
uh-huh.
The guy said, I have the most exciting news. No, we didn't get the Condé Nast Best Award. No, I didn't just start a new job. He listed 3 other things and he said, I'm happy to announce we have absolutely no management openings at our hotel. We can service you and the guests. And I thought, that is so cool. Double thumbs up, right?
That is a double thumbs up. And then I saw this morning on LinkedIn or in a press release that um, what's his name is leaving US Travel and starting a agency to help staff
Roger
our
Dow.
hotel
Yeah.
properties.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Roger Dow. Thank you.
Yeah, he wanted to do it kind of like the gig economy, like an
Mhm.
app. So, so my best friends own a company that own and manage hotels. We met at UNLV, and they were just a lot smarter and business savvy than me. And they have, for at least 4 or 5 years now, had robots at their hotels,
Mhm.
which people at first were not so keen on. But when you think about that a robot can bring you your silverware, he can bring you your toothpaste and a towel, and you don't have
Right.
to ask someone at the front desk. And robots are also being used to clean guest rooms. But using an app like that is different standards for different properties. And so
Right.
maybe we're going to have to look more at standardization of how you do clean guest rooms and banquet rooms. And
Right. Yeah. Well, and even how do you offer food and beverage at at hotels in junction or in general? And then somebody was chatting with as well, which I thought was interesting, is they said that there's going to be really high end hotels and then there's going to be the low end hotels but that middle, those hotels are going to kind of go away. They're not going to make any money. So how can we make more money, or how can those properties make money servicing food and beverage as well with the different types of staff? That's, because I said that's convention hotels is right there in the middle.
that's
And
correct. That's correct. And those are burn and turn kind of people.
mhm,
You're doing a group of 2,000. I mean, I remember when I worked at the Hyatt Regency Phoenix, or even when I worked at the Lowe's Anatole, which is a Hilton now.
mhm.
Um, at the Anatole, we could do 2,000 in one area, 1,500 in another area, and then another 2,000 in another area. And being able to staff something like that right now is very difficult.
It is. And okay. Oh, here's Nancy. Yay, Nancy. All right. I'm going to add her into this stream. Hello, ma'am. I'm going to change her. There we go. That's better. Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Oh, she's muted. Hi,
Okay.
Nancy. Nice to meet
You're on
you.
mute. I don't think I can unmute you.
There I am.
Okay. There you go. Okay. Awesome. Well, and yeah, kind of going back to that is like, how do we manage that, those large groups? And one convention center person I talked to, turned down a 1,000 person dinner because they couldn't handle it, but they picked up a $500 person one instead because they could manage it. And understanding that, and if you're trying to book an event 3 years in advance, you can have those questions for your properties now, but how are you going to deal with them 2 years later? Nancy, you just had an event in Colorado. How did that go?
Which aspect?
Well, let's just talk. Well, let's
Where
talk
were
food and
you at?
beverage.
How many people?
Yeah.
Well, let's go back a couple of years when we contracted in 2019 for this year's event, and the expectation was the 1600 to 1800 point. And I think they should be proud that they had 1,000 on site and another few hundred virtually.
Right.
Most of the attendees who could not be on site were authors from China who might have been able to get there if they had visas, but getting home was more challenging.
Gotcha.
So 1,000 were on site. I think 1,000 were very happy to be there and meeting in person. I'm a live event person. I think you can't replace virtual. There are elements of virtual that are great. Here we are. But in terms of networking and education, you can't beat being face to face.
No, you can't. It really is. I'm trying to make my light be seen a little bit better here.
You're good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it does, you do have your challenges across the board and how do you figure that out? And your numbers, it would have been interesting to see what you could have done if your numbers skyrocketed at the last minute, to have more than those 1,000 people. How do you manage that, right?
Well, in terms of the smaller plates that Lynn was describing, you give a person a smaller plate, they're going to pile on a smaller plate.
Right.
We cannot control how much food people are taking. A smaller plate suggests taking less, but that's not how people operate. That's not how they're wired. We did have an event at an off-site location, and I know that I had confirmed food for 225, which definitely suggests that there will be food for a few more.
Right.
And I know I checked in about 206 people. I know I collected 180 some odd tickets. I did a rough count of maybe another 20 or so. So I know I had under the amount of the guarantee. And at some point, they just ran out of food.
Right.
And the last tray they brought out was, I don't even remember what was on the list that could have been that fried. And that was the last tray they brought out. And there were 17 people who ultimately did not have a meal. And to the restaurant's credit, the event manager said, here's the menu. Just have people order and we'll bring out food for them at no additional cost, of course, because they were responsible for feeding 225 people.
Right.
I was one of them, which was fine because family eats last. That's but the program chair also didn't. And there was a gentleman there from Italy who was traveling with 2 high school students who were actually presenting at the program, which I thought was a major accomplishment because everyone else was, at that doctoral and postdoc level. So here were 2 high school students actually presenting at a technical event. So these
amazing.
Didn't get dinner either. So I said, okay, line up, here's a menu. Tell me what you'd like. And, another 20, 25 minutes later, everybody had their food, which was fine. But I happened to be positioned at the end of the buffet line, not because I wanted to be there, but that was also the part of the entry point. So I could see what people were taking and people were loading up. So they're taking more as if they hadn't eaten all day. And I know they'd eaten during the day.
You fed them. Yeah, exactly. Now and I think that's a mindset that we also need to educate and change, but that's not going to happen overnight, right? Hey, you can say, hey, we've got smaller plates. Take what you can't fit on the plate now, but come back,
Right. Or Tracy, that's the advantage. So we were in Northern California for my cousin's daughter's bat mitzvah, and it was an assisted buffet. Yeah, I can do that too. So she's actually my cousin, Meredith. But it was an assisted buffet. So you told the server what you wanted. They put it on the plate for you.
Okay.
So then you run into the labor versus the food cost.
Right.
But I'm still a big fan of that labor cost over the food cost.
Now, also, the hotels are applying surcharges if you add a percentage above what you've guaranteed at a certain point. And that was Denver. And there were times that we said, okay, we're charge us the surplus because now we find that we need X number more for the awards dinner. When I had accounted for that, I'd accounted for 20 or 30 above, and we were still above that. So yes, we paid the 5% surcharge and understood that in advance. But now I have a contract for an event in December, and if you add within a week's time, they're adding $40
Wow.
$40 per person. And as I'm reviewing the contract, I said, no, you can delete that. Oh no, that's X hotel policy. $40? You know, if I tried to add dinner for 50, 8 o'clock in the morning for a 6 p.m. dinner, that's just not reasonable. These
Right.
days, it's just not reasonable. But
Right.
don't tell me a week out that if I make a change, you're going to charge me $40 per person more. So
Yeah, and that's a struggle. I mean, and trying to figure that out. And I think part of it reminds me of when I went in April in Florida, and the property, it was during Passover, and I said, "Hey, I wanted to add some other stuff." They're like, "We don't have the staff because we didn't have any food functions today. We gave them all the day off, and they're all working at other properties because it's Passover, so they're making money somewhere else." So it is really having to think through your food and beverage well in advance with a lot of what ifs. What if this happens? What if this happens? But asking those questions of the properties as well.
I remember Tracy years ago. So I've been married 20 years, but way before that, I dated a guy that was the executive chef at the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess Hotel. And at that time, they were experimenting with the al dente. So you would sit down, and the waiter would come over and he'd say, "This evening, we're offering sea bass, filet, or chicken Florentine." And the person would actually order right then, and Reed would have enough time for his team to prepare that and present it to you al dente, like made fresh for you. And so we were really going towards the culture of fresh, what you want the minute you want it. And today we can't necessarily do that as well as we would like. And
Right.
it's beyond the, what do they call it? The supply chain.
Right.
I think it's beyond that. I think it's, I don't know where you are, Nancy. I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. And I went to a fabulous seafood restaurant on Sunday night. A friend took us, and that was not right. That was not right to see shellfish in the desert. People should not be ordering that in the desert. We should be showcasing our Angus beef and showcasing we have a trout farm that a Native American tribe owns and a pecan farm. So I think that's really where we need to go back to the organic roots.
Right.
well,
You're laughing, Nancy.
Tracy knows I spend a lot of time in Arizona. I have family in Tucson and Scottsdale and Lake Havasu. I don't order fish in the desert.
Right.
It's just not right. So when you were talking about multiple entree options, there are hotels that are still reluctant to, well, not do it tableside, but we offer multiple options during our registration process. So vegetarian beef shellfish or vegetarian chicken shellfish. And we will tell the hotel in advance, we need 40 vegetarian, 60 shellfish, and 82 chicken. But then I take those numbers and I add to it so that we've covered ourselves.
Right.
We also instruct the hotel, do not allow anyone to say, "Oh, I want what she's having," because what she's having has already been accounted for.
Right.
So it may look better and say, "Oh yeah, that vegetarian dish looks great. I'm not a vegetarian, but it really looks good." No, if you've selected chicken, you're getting chicken. And we do plan for above that. So then they're amenable to, okay, if they have their little ticket that says I'm getting chicken, we serve them chicken, that's it.
Right. Well, and it's kind of going back to the wedding thing. Choose your entree, right? Or, I mean, when we did it, I did events 25 years ago. It's like you did ask that in advance, and maybe that's a way that we can, going back to what Tracy Cooper said, manage our costs, right? And how do you do that? I know some caterers are talking about, cutting the portion sizes, right? Because somebody's like, yeah, an 8-ounce piece of steak, and I'm like, who needs an 8-ounce piece of steak? Right? You don't. So if you can talk to them and get a smaller cut, how does that impact your cost? How much does that impact your prices as well as the caterer's prices, right?
But Tracy, but exactly what you're saying, in my head, my most favorite meal, it's not a secret, is a salad, a baked potato, a ribeye, and then apple pie. But today people are getting poke bowls and they're having build your own salad. So even our way of thinking, and you're a lot younger than me, of how you construct a meal, and I'm sure you see this all the time, Nancy, even that is changing.
Right.
And so we have to rethink entrees and options and even breakfast. So
So here's something I commented about to our hotelier. A brand has changed its menu significantly. One of the first things I found is that I couldn't order a continental breakfast because, get this, people were complaining that there weren't hot items in a continental breakfast. Okay, my understanding is there is a hot item. It's called coffee. It's a continental breakfast. It doesn't have hot items. I would, for a companion event, I would take the continental breakfast and then I would add an oatmeal bar one day, or I would add some kind of egg sandwich another day. So I would build on that. But they've eliminated the continental breakfast unless you cobble it together from a la carte items, which then makes it more expensive than what they were offering as a continental breakfast. Also, they have moved to healthier meal options. I'm not opposed to that, but these meal options said to me, you are going to eat kale and you're going to like it.
Right.
Okay.
Not
I
everybody
don't eat
likes kale.
romaine. I am sorry. I don't like those fancy greens. Don't bring me a salad. Yeah.
And I found that the options were good in the long run, but they've also moved to the daily meal option. And this happened way before the pandemic. If everyone who's meeting in the hotel orders the Italian buffet lunch on Monday, it is more cost effective for everyone in the end, because then the staff is all preparing the same thing. They can order all that chicken, all that pasta, all those tomatoes to make the sauce, etc. But then they're missing the one other option, like a sandwich option or a deli option, in case the Tuesday Mexican theme or Chinese theme doesn't work for the particular group, because there's still a lot of meat and potatoes people out there who want meat and potatoes.
And so, Nancy, that seems to be the conference center model. Here in Phoenix, we have two fabulous conference centers where, 13 groups meet, and then they all share the same breakfast and lunch. And that model seems to really not have taken such a high hit price-wise and been convenient because it also includes your AV, but you're limited in the number of people.
Well, and Kyle Jordan has mentioned it to me before as well, is that here's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He's like, but the challenge that he has with it is that you do that same event in April, and that's the same menu in October, right? And that, if you're coming to that hotel multiple times and you're not changing your menu Monday through Friday or Saturday, Saturday to Sunday, all the way through, like, change it monthly. Right? So that the same group is not getting the same food.
To be honest, I'm not looking at this. I can't confirm. Well, actually, I can confirm that. We were looking at a spring summer set of menus in this particular venue. So in a conference center, it may be different, but I still see fall, winter, spring, summer menus. So there may be some similar, maybe the breakfast bread options are the same. But here's something else that the hotel hadn't thought about. I was looking at some options for break items, and I said, what I don't see is that chocolate chip breakfast bread, because I think I'd like to order that, because I do still offer some sweet with some healthier options. Not to say that sweet can't be healthy too, but he said, we don't offer that any longer. I said, then I suggest you take the picture off the menu. Because there were still a bunch of things pictured that are no longer on the menus.
Right. All right. I want to show Tracy Osterman Thompson. Hello, my friend from Atlanta. She says, as an attendee, I would love the half portion option for dinner and 4 ounces versus 8 ounce. Could that be an option? That's a great point. I think they can't make that decision at the very last minute. I think that needs to be negotiated up front, right? And making those sides heartier for that person who does want that 8 ounce. I mean, I don't think you want to have extra 8 ounces or 4 ounces just sitting around places, but maybe it's a dual entree some sort of way. But I think the idea, Tracy, of and what you guys said earlier is asking the questions in advance, maybe, right? Putting the menus out there as well in advance before you show up.
What if the portions of meat, protein got smaller?
Yep.
What would happen then? Would people complain that they didn't have enough in a 3-course meal with a appetizer that could be salad / appetizer, plus your protein portion and its accompaniments, and then a dessert and coffee, and chances are a glass of wine or water and iced tea. That sounds like a meal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because at home, who's eating an 8-ounce piece of steak? I'm sure there's somebody. And Tracy, you're right. It's about waste. I hate wasting that food. And actually, I was in an event a couple months ago. It was a dual entree, and I only ate one of the pieces of protein.
So Tracy, I was with you in DC, and you were headlining at lunch, and you were doing I never told you this other half. So you were doing a decomposed Cobb salad, which for me was beyond awesome because I don't eat pork and I don't eat eggs. Just weird things about me. So I spoke that day, and then I flew. My husband picked me up at the airport, and I drove to speak in Palm Springs for their MPI chapter. And they that day also for lunch offered a Cobb salad, but it was composed. And so there was the bacon that I wasn't going to eat, the eggs I wasn't going to eat, something else. And so I asked the waiter, is there a different option? He said no.
Well, I love that meal. That was for MPI Potomac chapter, and
awesome.
It was so good. But I loved it as well because it was on a lazy Susan in the middle of the table, so all the options, you could spin it around and make your meal as you wanted. And I thought that was a fun interactive lunch option for people, just even doing it at the table versus doing it at the buffet, right? So that comes into a lot of challenges. That's labor because you got to put all those different bowls together, right? And it comes into a little bit more food waste potentially as well, because how much is going to actually be consumed at each one of those tables, right? It's all things to think through, and I don't think they can all be solved, in a single.
But it was way better than me not being able to have my salad the next day, because I'm not the only one who doesn't eat eggs or pork.
Right.
So there were other people in the room looking for other options as well, none available. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, and we do these events, and we do them at restaurants, but we also are doing, a lot of them are doing that preset. They want that preset meal at a restaurant, which is different than a normal restaurant experience because you get to pick off the menu what you want, versus having to feed 1,000 people at one time. So managing those two expectations of here's the customized meal that you can order off the menu versus group eating and production, it adds a big challenge to that as well, which I think is just, and that's where I've seen a lot of caterers teaching restaurateurs how to be caterers, right? Because it's a different mindset. And even actually when I was in charge of the tasting tents at the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, this was a decade ago, restaurateurs coming in and trying to make food for 3,000 people, they make a lot more than what they actually need, right? So it is a challenge. How I saw something on the Today Show this morning about how to get your water without necessarily just drinking your glass of water, right? And to stay hydrated in this heat, and looking at that aspect of it, it was interesting. I did find out this morning, and the doctor that was talking about it too found out that milk was actually it was very hydrating, which I thought was interesting. But because it's also gossip.
My husband always drinks a glass of chocolate milk after we work out at the gym.
That's what she was saying. Her son does that as well, and their coaches tell them to do that because it's got the proteins and the fats and all of these other things in it that help bring those back after working out. Yes.
Being from Arizona, I am always drinking 2 beverages at once.
Nice.
One is water and one is not. Because sometimes it's just too hot to drink water. I don't know if that would make sense or not, but then that's the only thing that quenches your thirst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you need a little of both. Yeah.
So this week, Joan Eisenstadt posted something it was about Hilton's new advertising. Which ironically, I saw the Facebook post, and then I went downstairs and there was a commercial for Hilton talking about coming to the hotel, not talking about the destination, but coming to the hotel. And somebody asked in that Facebook group, Does that mean that housekeeping is going to be back and food service is going to be back in the restaurants? And I happened to check into a Hilton that day, and no, the restaurant was closed, and there was no rooms, no room service whatsoever. And the housekeeping was on a at request or when you leave moment. But coming back to the food and beverage aspect of it, Joan is like, well, what did you do for food? And it was interesting because on their key card, the Ruth Chris logo was on their key card, and Ruth's Chris Steakhouse was across the street. So it wasn't in the property, but it was literally across the street. But how does somebody who utilizes wheelchairs or scooters get food if they can't get out to go get those, right? So those are some other,
So here's something that people know about, but I don't. It's called DoorDash.
Yep.
And Uber Eats. I've never used either one in my life, but we had a friend that had surgery, and that was, the only option because she was in another city. So I agree with you, Tracy. I think that we just had that same experience. We went to visit my brother in Vegas and stayed at a Hilton and had that same experience. And I'm a gold member. So you're used to having certain things that don't necessarily exist anymore.
Right.
But I think that's a revenue source that the hotel's not remunerating on. And it's difficult for your guests, like you said. What if you are? I mean, I don't walk so well always. So
right. Well, and just speaking of DoorDash, I think it's DoorDash, but what's the new hotel in Vegas? The
Resort World?
Yeah, Resort World is actually, I think it's partnered with DoorDash. So you can actually order your food on the DoorDash app from all of the restaurants, from the restaurants within the hotel, and they will deliver it to your room. And the bill gets charged to your room versus paying through it on DoorDash, which I thought was pretty cool.
So they deliver to your room?
Mm-hmm.
The DoorDash people deliver to your room?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So doesn't that...
Well, it may be
in line with security unless they're delivering it to a hotel staff person who then delivers to your room.
Well, it could be that the DoorDash person, I think there may be, I think they're using their technology and something like that. So it could be actually an employee, or the DoorDash person works, for the hotel, something like that. That is actually a good question. When I go to Vegas for IMAX, I need to look that up and go talk to them about that, because it is an interesting model. But Lynn, that's a huge opportunity, saying, hey, here are a hotel could just say, here are the restaurants that are available on DoorDash or Uber Eats, that you can get through delivered here, right? But it does depend.
That is a huge property.
Right.
But my husband and I really like the Hilton El Conquistador in Tucson. Mm-hmm. And they have had a lot of challenges through this pandemic. And we were just there over the 4th of July, and it was like an hour wait for a hamburger, but then it rained that weekend. So you ordered something you couldn't even have. Yeah. The breakfast place that we usually went to, they weren't even seating people. They were doing boxes if you were a gold member that you could pick up after a 30-minute wait. So
wow.
It's really hard for people to get people, and especially you don't want to. I mean, remember who was the first one? Wasn't it Wolfgang Puck that did the first restaurant in a hotel, and people thought, right?
He was crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think all of this conversation brings up to us as planners is, what do we need to ask our properties, right? And it takes me back to April as well. I mean, I know there were some restaurants that were closed, but we went to go have a breakfast meeting, and that there was no announcement that the restaurant was closing down for breakfast that day. So where were we supposed to go for breakfast, right? It was just a staff breakfast. It wasn't anything else. But those are the questions that you actually have to ask now, right? And also of your properties. And I think that it makes it really hard when you're asking about that 3 years out, right? And what kind of, Nancy, when you're looking at these contracts and you're signing these contracts, are you seeing any adding new clauses to them? And I know somebody was there was an article about how somebody negotiated the prices 3 years ago, and the prices have gone up astronomically, but the planner was wanting the 10% discount off of the previous year's prices. I'm interested in, what are you contracting these days?
That is, well, a couple of things. We do request the 10% off the prior year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been successful in getting that. I've also negotiated a different percentage off non-alcoholic beverages, which screams coffee.
Right.
People aren't drinking as much soda, but they're still drinking coffee and tea, whether it's regular or decaf, and it's still 80, 90, 100, 110, $120 a gallon plus.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we've been successful in establishing that. And of course, that becomes a regional sort of thing, because there are areas where coffee is still $50 a gallon.
Right.
And others that are 120.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to jump in. I have a client who does espresso bars for events in Phoenix. And sometimes hotels hire him because he's cheaper than if they did it themselves. So
interesting.
Would he charge? Oh, sorry, that was my husband. Would he charge us for an espresso bar or cappuccino is like $8 a person, and the hotel charges 10 or 12. So
that's a really good partnership to have. And I know one planner was talking about giving everybody Starbucks go to Starbucks.
Right.
But that line gets long.
Yeah, that doesn't always work. It's a good concept, but then you have 30 or 40 or 50 people waiting in line for Starbucks.
Right.
And that becomes a problem. But getting back to bringing in the espresso bar,
you do meetings here in Phoenix, Nancy?
I'm sorry?
Do you do meetings here in Phoenix?
I would love to do meetings all over Arizona. I just don't have as much call for it. It's been since 2009 that I used the convention center in Phoenix. And I haven't been able to sell Tucson in years, unfortunately. And we are there yearly visiting family. We were just there in May, actually. I love Arizona.
I was just there in May too. Oh my God.
But getting back to
espresso
bar that you were, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Nancy.
You were talking about the espresso bar. That is something that the hotel otherwise does offer, and I'll tell you why I'm asking that specifically. So the hotel does offer it, but it would be less expensive to bring it in from the outside, or the hotel doesn't offer it at all?
They have it on their menus, and then they contract my client and bring him in. A lot of times it's like the JW Marriott Desert Ridge or the Phoenician. The Princess uses him a lot because he rolls in and has everything self-contained.
So I know the rules in the contract. I know about not bringing in outside food. I have advised clients in advance that you can't do that, citing the example of being at the convention center in Seattle in 2009, where the committee and their family members were stuffing conference kits, and they had their kids doing it, and they got very competitive because who can stuff the most kits the fastest. So I was there with our conference services manager, and I see a couple of parents carrying in 20 pizzas. Somebody else has 3 cases of Coca-Cola, and CSM says, "Nancy, what are they doing over there?" I said, "I told them they couldn't. I told them not to." And sure enough, they're bringing in pizza and soda for the kids, and they knew they weren't supposed to. So fast forward to our event in Denver this year, where we were working to promote next year's event in Portland. So as a save the date for exhibitors and things like that, and to promote the future year's events, I bought some small food items that are specifically produced in Portland.
Okay.
They cannot be found in Denver. They're specific to Portland. And I attached them to a save the date card, and I started laying them out and handing them to exhibitors. And a member of the hotel staff said, "I'm sorry, you can't do that because you're not allowed to bring in outside food." I said, "This isn't outside food. This is a promotional item."
Right.
Personal consumption is the key word there. Personal consumption. Yeah.
So I said, "Well, I'm sorry, it isn't outside food because you don't offer this on your menu. I couldn't have ordered 200 of these because you don't offer them." And the staff member was younger, yet knew hotel policy, and so did I from the contract. So a manager came in and I explained the situation, and they brought that to our event manager. And I said, "I'm standing by my promotional product discussion earlier." And they let it go under the circumstances, but it was a promotional item. Now, I guess what I could have done is said to my event manager, I need something produced in Portland, where they would have bought it and then marked it up by 20 or 30% and sold it back to me. I guess they could have done that.
Oh,
but
there's so many rules.
I said, I have a fixed number of these, and when they're gone, they're gone. Now, within the same event, I ordered centerpieces for the banquet. And years ago, my client said, same event, but different committee, I want a centerpiece that everyone can share. Flowers aren't going anywhere because most everyone's not local, and it's just a waste. I want to put a basket of items that are sourced locally so that the 10 people at the table can say, oh, I would like one of these and one of these. And, oh, what would you like? Here, pass the basket around. So I've used that for years. I did it in Atlanta. I did it in Boston. Here we were doing it in Denver. And one of the items was a bottle of beer. And the two women operating this company doing centerpieces are former hoteliers. She said, are you sure it's okay with the hotel if we put a bottle of beer in there? I said, absolutely. It's a warm bottle of beer. It's one in a basket on a table. We're not selling it. It's not going to be consumed in lieu of someone getting a nice cold beer at the bar, which was an open bar. So somebody could have 2 and 3 beers during the evening. They're not going to open up this one bottle of warm beer. So after the fact, I found that they went to the hotel because they behind my back.
Right.
But I understood what they wanted to do. They wanted their 40 baskets not to be declined at the door because the bottle of beer was in there. So they talked to our event manager, who said, under these circumstances, yes, it's fine. I found out after the fact. I said, you went to them behind my back. But I understood why they did that. They didn't want someone to take those bottles out and we'll accept the baskets. Everything else in there was legit. They were bath products. They were other food items that weren't offered by the hotel.
Right.
And everybody loved the idea. But
I think that idea is great. But what about, it made me think of all those exhibitors who put bags of candy on their booth, right? In a hotel.
Well, they look at that differently because it's a little teeny tiny crackle bar, by Hershey, or it's a little tiny Kiss in a bowl this big.
Right.
Now, yes, could they purchase those from the hotel at $40 a pound? I guess they could.
Yeah.
It's more chips and pretzels and peanuts that are on the hotel's menus than, individual wrapped candies.
Right.
They can put sucking candies out without question, but yes, they do that, and the hotel kind of looks the other way.
Yeah.
Or convention center.
Hey, Lynn, you were going to say something a few minutes ago.
I totally forgot what I was going to say. I was so engrossed in what Nancy's centerpiece was.
I love that centerpiece because it's something fun. It's something to talk about. It's something to take away. And it's not, a big floral arrangement to take away. If you're local, I think that's a great idea. Take that succulent away. But you do have to make sure that you check with your florist that they can take the bowl with them, right? The vase.
Well, I actually tried to return the vessel to the gals who operated the company because they were tall, like metal beer buckets. And I said, well, I know we've bought these, but I now have 40 of them. So she said, we're not going to come and get them. Do what we've done as past hoteliers, leave them for the hotel so that they can reuse them for a client event and fill them with their own stuff. And I said, sure, I'll leave them. 2 or 3 went to someone local to use for gardening. And I said, absolutely fine. But we left them for the hotel.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense too. Because you want it to be reused, and or, we did tents for a party outside at an event in Florida, and I ended up, Michelle Blondheim worked with the local Arts and or Parks and Rec department of the county, and they came and picked up those tents so they could use it at football games and things like that. So looking at ways to make sure, and food and beverages is a completely different thing, but there's buckets as well. That's a great way to reuse them. So I'm trying to get somebody on the show to talk about the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act, which is actually being updated this year with it's called the Food Donation Act of 2021, which
Right.
is going to make it easier for individuals and organizations to make donations. So I'm trying to get that because I think that's another aspect of we meeting planners that and our hotel partners, catering center partners, can really utilize that and make that happen. So, well, ladies, we've been chatting for 45 minutes.
Well, getting back to
Nancy,
the
you're
act,
very engaging. I'm so excited.
can
All
we
right.
talk about food donation? Do we have time?
Yeah, we do.
So in Phoenix, we have Waste Not. They pick up food. They can actually pick up from hotels if the client signs off on it. They deliver to nonprofits, and they are super awesome nonprofit, and they are suffering from a severe lack of cash for maintenance and repairs on the truck and gas on the truck. And
Yep, that's an issue. That is a big. You don't even think about that. But and Nancy, what about you?
A lot of hotels require that any of the donations need to be items that are still wrapped, still in the back, still refrigerated.
Mm-hmm.
If it's, of course, if it's been sitting out for an hour or more, it is compromised. Some of the items are compromised. Some might be still in good shape to be donated, but the hotel's not willing to do that. And it does go to their staff cafeterias, which is still fine and not wasting it. But most of what can go out needs to be from their refrigeration units, and anything that hasn't been sitting out. And that's, I would support that. I don't want to see waste either, but we get caught with our clients who don't want waste, but then they want it plentiful.
Right.
So I'll tell Lynn something that I think I've told Tracy. A program can be technically flawless, but what do they take home? Can you believe they ran out of muffins Monday morning? So in the spirit of full disclosure, Monday morning at a program in Boston in 2018, we ran out of muffins. We did. I was using all the right numbers. The program flow was the same as the last year. I even added some. And were people hungrier? Perhaps. Was it the sea air? Maybe that was it. I'm not quite sure. Maybe we had more grad students who were hungrier. I don't know. So the gentleman who was the chair for the following year said, we can't let that happen in our program. I said, it happened one day, and we ensured that we were okay the balance of the week. And then, of course, the audience drops off at the end of the week. So we were fine. And next year happens, and he said, there are 3 dozen bagels left over. I said, you cannot have plentiful and no waste simultaneously. The 3 dozen bagels are not going to be tossed out. They are going to be consumed, just not in the last 10 minutes.
Right. Yep.
So we try to strike the right balance.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And that's a hard thing to do. And that's really kind of knowing your numbers, trying to figure that out and knowing what people like and don't like to eat as well. And that's a hard thing as well. But, how much do you track? Okay, so you go through and the bagels, you order these bagels. And one chef in New Orleans is like telling his meeting planners, do not order bagels. Nobody's eating bagels because they're too big, they're cumbersome, and he's like, plus in New Orleans, they're coming for the beignets. They're not coming to eat a bagel.
Well, right? In New Orleans, I wouldn't order bagels.
Right.
There is a discussion about bagels on the news this morning because there's a new bagel purveyor, Pop-Up Bagels, in Connecticut. And apparently they've discovered a way to make a lighter bagel than what's sold in New York and New Jersey. It's all about the water.
Right.
It's all about the water. I won't get into the discussion of bagels with Lynn because I bring bagels to Arizona.
My mom always did too. Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, but it's all about the water here. So I haven't looked up Pop-Up Bagels yet, but popupbagels.com, I think it is. And people are now, you can only, if you want extra, you have to order them in advance online because now people are leaving Connecticut to go back to New York and New Jersey and they want to take their bagels with them to New York and New Jersey because the bagels in New York are just growing exponentially and they're thicker, larger, denser. And I mean, who can eat that much bagel as much as I love bagels?
Right. Yeah. There's an article in the New York Times, a New York bagel company, a bagel from an unexpected borough, Connecticut.
That's it.
Yep.
Pop-Up Bagels.
And it's apparently this was back in April, so that'll be interesting. I'll have to read that. That's interesting. But It reminds me of Lynn, something you said too, but kind of ties this into it. Is Zoe Moore mentioned to me in one of the eating at a meeting episodes? Is that bring in the authenticity, right? I like the fact that you talked about the coffee bar, right? And Nancy, you're bringing New York bagels to Arizona, but can you bring that authenticity, that local culture of food into your food and beverage event? You know, and so one example Zoe used was, if you're in San Francisco that has a great Chinatown, why are you having one of the line cooks do the sushi when you could go, rent out, buy out a restaurant, have them come in and do it? One of the Asian restaurants that does the sushi roll, and add that extra touch. I mean, probably doing that sushi is going to pay for one night's restaurant, one restaurant owner's night by doing that kind of event. But thinking about it a little bit differently as well. But there again, that has to be contracted with the hotel or the convention center, figuring out how that works.
You're going to have to, well, I'm thinking about an event in 2023 where we're bringing in food trucks outside the convention center and actually paying what I call a penalty to the in-house caterer, because we're not using their services for that night, and the group is being required to pay X. And I actually spoke to the caterer. I said, so they're being penalized. That's not they had some other name for it. That's
liaison fee is what it's called in AV, liaison fee.
Wow. A corkage fee?
I wouldn't even call it that, because they're not doing the liaising.
Right.
We're doing it. We're soliciting the trucks. People
so
locally.
You're doing a revenue recovery for them.
Yeah, it's a revenue something, and I've tried to object to it, but we don't really have a ground to stand on.
So it's kind of like a corkage fee in another way.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, and I have to go back to Cater Source, because Cater Source did some food trucks this past whatever month it was in this year, and we did not have lunch. Lunch was not planned as well. I mean, it wasn't. They've never really had lunch offered during Cater Source, as far as I can remember. So they had food trucks out there. So I'm wondering if they had to do something with that, contract with the Anaheim Convention Center as well.
How many people attended that event, just out of curiosity? Cater Source?
A couple thousand. I think it was like 2,500.
And how many food trucks did they have?
3.
Yeah, so food trucks seem like a panacea, but it's my experience that they're like a short order cook, because you go up and you order what you want and they prepare it, and so you still have a line forming behind you. So and then, like me, the pickiest eater in the world, as Nancy said, I don't eat kale. So then for me it's a process of elimination. Where can I go that I do like something?
Right.
So
well, and so actually on that note, Nancy, I challenge you with, or I offered this opportunity, I guess, in communicating, when you're bringing in food trucks, right, put those menus up online in advance, because you are standing in line and you really can't see. And if you go try to look at the menu, somebody's going to think you're butting in line, right?
Right, definitely.
Let them have the ability to see what's being offered by those food trucks, and make sure that those food trucks offer a variety of different food. Do you have a vegan truck? Do you have gluten-free truck? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, thinking about some of the things that you've said, and Lynn too, in terms of what we're serving our groups, we have groups where a lot of people don't consume pork. So I don't serve any food items with pork. I don't serve any food items with shellfish. I just eliminate those. Now, I can't eliminate all of the items from the allergen list. Right. Admittedly, yes, there are a lot of eggs out there, actually a lot of hard-boiled eggs, which I'm switching in and out for a morning protein, switching them with yogurt and having a sweet item and having fresh fruit. But in terms of the trucks, yes, to your point, we'll be advertising the trucks in advance, because that's part of the welcome reception evening. So we will want people to know what's available, what they'll have. And that'll be probably in the last month or two before the event takes place.
So now I'm very curious, how many people and how many food trucks?
Well, that's why I was asking Tracy, because I can't imagine there would be less than 10 or 12 trucks
Right.
at a minimum. We
Right.
will likely be ordering the beverages from the in-house caterer at the center.
Mhm.
So there'll be beverage bars available. But it would have to be that, because you're talking about your, let's call it an entree item. So your taco, your bowl of pasta, your super duper burger, your
Mhm.
vegan option. Um, and then there's got to be, let's call them a Mr. Softy truck.
Right.
So, or Waffles and Dreams. There's
Right.
a family who does a waffle truck in our area. So
Yeah.
they'll come and do birthday brunches for you with waffles. So
Oh, that's fun.
so what we're trying to work out now is how we're paying for everything
Gotcha.
and how everyone pays for individually, because you're coming to the welcome reception, so it should be paid for in advance, but we can't really know exactly what it's going to be in the end. So
Right.
I've been talking about this now. I have to restart the conversation, but I want everyone to have a gift card with, that has X dollars on it,
Right.
so that it can be used at each of the trucks, so that they can pay for their $12 burger or their $7 dessert. And if there's leftover on the card, like, so be it. So someone's left with $12. That's fine. If we are paying $65 or $75, it could have been $110 if we
Right.
were paying for a catered meal. So if someone's left with $12 at the end of the evening, okay, so they buy $12 worth of something else down the road. I'm not expecting
Right.
to get it back from Visa, for example, but you're giving everyone X dollars to have their meal for the evening and drinks. So,
But
Well,
you
that's
can have your Visa card with a sponsor on it, Nancy, just so you know.
yes, we can do that.
right. That's very true. And I just tagged Paige Nathan, who's out of Atlanta, and she does food truck events. And so I just said, hey, come pipe in, and so she can coordinate all of that for you, and you pay her. And I think that's how it works. But I said, hey,
Yes.
some great questions for you to answer. So I just
All right,
tagged
and
her.
just so you do know, Nancy, a very popular food truck is the In-N-Out burger truck. It's not in every
Oh, wow.
state, but they do them. They do them here.
In California.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So my students are very keen on that when they're doing events. Yeah.
Very cool.
Now I know.
No, you go right ahead.
Because Lynn started when I joined in talking about her class. You said you were doing this at NAU?
Yes, I'm going to be teaching. So I've taught at Scottsdale Community College for 15 years, and I'm going to be teaching on-premise catering at Northern Arizona University. It is a hyperflex class. That means I'll be live in the classroom, and my students will be live and virtual. So I'm so excited to add to my learning curve in my education profession. And I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, I think that's very cool. And I want to see how you incorporate all the new trends and, and how caterers are doing that now, after that book was written, right? And after the pandemic.
Yeah. So so the book is old, and I was also sharing that I teach professional event coordination with a very old book too.
Yeah.
So you as an instructor have to really put in a lot of additional information.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we need to get more people in our industry. I'm excited because I think it's an awesome industry, and we do a lot of fun things. It is a little nerve-wracking at times. That's why my hair is gray, whichever side I'm on here. Yeah, I think it's fun. So I'm going to wrap us up here, lady, because we have been chatting for 58 minutes, and I love it. So
this was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think I'm going to do this once a month. And that, have members of the Eating at a Meeting community come on, and we're just going to chat about what we're seeing and what questions we have. So
I would just like to go back to one quick thing, Tracy,
Yeah.
and that is I think we should, again, look at more bamboo options instead of plastic options.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I'll
100%
just leave it
agree.
there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about sustainable options and how we can, and next month, let's talk about how can we incorporate those into our food functions when we're not using China, because the preferred way is to actually use China, but that we talk about labor and issues and things like that too. So, but Nancy Sutter Burns and Lynn Wellish, thank you so much for popping in with me today. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for being loyal listeners, and everybody. They are both members of the where's my little banner? Eating at a Meeting Facebook group. It's free to join, so join us there and ask all the questions you want about food and beverage, because we've got them. And if you ever have questions, just let me know. Until next week, same time, same channel, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. This is the Eating a Meeting Facebook or Eating at a Meeting podcast live, and we're here every Wednesday. And until next Wednesday, stay safe and eat well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, end broadcast. I want to take